I'm always interested to look at top athletes and people that I just respect. And I always notice that there's not only a big element of talent and of hard work ethic, but there seems to be a really consistent relationship between a strong psychology and those other two factors combined. And I'm keen to unpack this with you a little bit today because the way that that presents itself with different athletes, I find interesting. Like I look at a Usain Bolt before a race back when he was in his heyday, and he looked like the most relaxed athlete out there. You would look at him and you'd think, I can't believe he's about to race for an Olympic gold medal and he's about to break the world record. But then you'll have a look at a Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who's the 2 mile world record holder as of last weekend. And he, standing on the start line, I mean, he looks relatively relaxed, but he has an element of intensity in his
For
eyes.
sure.
And I'm constantly surprised at the different approaches or the different ways that people present themselves psychologically or physically before a race and how that plays out. And one of the things I was keen to talk to you about was whether or not there was any similarities between the way top level athletes and just top performers in day to day life approach that, because there seems on the surface to be a great difference between the way they approach it. But I'm sure beneath the surface, there's plenty of similar habits or practices taking place.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts about that. First of all, there's no doubt that the highest level of any area of performance, again, whether sports, business, surgery, whatever, they're all fundamentally genetic freaks. So, at least in the US, there's this sort of ethos that if you just work hard, you can be the best. It's simply not the case. And you can become quite good. But for example, a famous basketball coach once said, you can't teach height. So, you might have the best hook shot in the world, but if you're not if you're not 7 feet tall, you're not going to be playing in the paint in the NBA. And so clearly, yes, genes play a big role, but I've known a lot of gifted failures, a lot of can't miss kids who missed because they didn't have the other things, like you talked about the work ethic. And as far as the psychology, there are a ton of similarities between high achievers, but there are also differences. And the differences are in terms of just like genetic personality. So you're absolutely right. Usain Bolt is just a chill, fun-loving, easygoing guy who just rockets down a 100-meter track. Engelbrechtsen, he's an intense guy. He's super competitive, and you see it in the race and in how he prepares. So and you don't train that. I think that's just sort of who you are, how you express who you are in your particular area. And there's no one advantage. As a general rule, in some sports, for example, you have to be relaxed. But powerlifting, wrestling, no, you've got to be pretty intense. And so part of it is your own personality. Part of it is through experience, you figure out what works best for you. So if you are an introvert, some introverts before a competition love being just totally within themselves. And they don't want to talk to people. They just want to do their own thing. But an interesting thing about that is there's another side of introverts where that's the worst thing to do is go like this, because introverts often think a lot, and thinking doesn't always play well with high level performance. So even though someone's an introvert and likes being by themselves, some of them, the best thing for them to do, and I do this all the time with my athletes that I work with in terms of shaking up how they think they perform best, is that they socialize. They listen to music, they goof around, they get their mind totally off it until just before they go. Then, of course, they have to bring it in. And so that's where sort of the similarities and differences come in. But as far as sort of habits, that is what I call the mental tools they use, there are definitely some common ones. Obviously, setting goals is really popular. Self-talk. You're not going to find a lot of world-class athletes and professional athletes who are downers, who are down on themselves. Because if you're down on yourself, you're not going to have the confidence to put yourself out there and give your best effort. And another area is focus. Without a doubt that the best athletes, the best performers have a total focus process. A total focus on process. And there's a tendency in our culture, of course, it's all about results, which is true. I mean, you don't get ahead by being a nice person, although that can help, I suppose. You don't get ahead by working hard, although that's necessary. You get ahead by producing results. The problem is what our sports culture has taught a lot of people, especially kids these days, is that in order to get those goals and get those results, you need to focus on those results. The problem with that is, of course, when does the result of a competition occur? at the finish. So if you're focused on the finish, what are you not focused on? What do you need to get from the start to the finish? And so there's definitely commonalities in attitudes, in practices, mental imagery, unbelievably powerful tool. I don't know a world-class or professional athlete in any sport who doesn't do a ton of mental imagery / visualization. Two words mean the same thing. So, so it is interesting to really look at how different athletes are successful, and there's no one right way. And that's the journey that every competitive athlete, whether you're a best in the world or you're just an age grouper or weekend warrior, is figuring out what works best for you. And you can learn and observe others and go, oh, that's sort of like me.